Hey quilters, it's Anjali from Doodle Quilting Studio, and I am going to show you today how to attach your quilt binding on the long arm. So I have my binding here, and so if you have one of these machines and you have the horizontal spool pin, not only can you use it for couching, you can use it to hold your binding while you attach it to your quilt. So right now you can see the quilt, it just finished on Q-matic, so we're at the bottom here. But I actually want to start further up on the side because I'm actually going to use the long arm to close my binding too. And I will link to the gal that I saw, and then basically the way that I learned how to do it. And then we'll link you to her. She has this really cool ruler that can help you close up the ends of your binding once you get to that point here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come over here, and I've already unlocked my rail here. So I'm just going to bring my quilt down and really, let's see. I'm kind of just aiming for about the middle of the side. So I'm gonna actually start right here on this side. And this quilt, we did a couple different things on it. So we did some 3 different designs. It's a mountains pattern, I think, from Moda. Anyway, so we have a couple different things going on here, but I'm going to start in the middle on the side here, attaching my binding. But before I do that, a few supplies that you want to have. I have the ruler foot. Let's turn this around. I'm going to turn the camera around and show you guys. Okay, so on the machine, so the machine setup, I have, it's the 72 foot. You could use the 72, you could use the 96, whichever you prefer, and a ruler. So I have this it's 4x10 ruler from PM Quilting. It's one of my favorite rulers, just a good straight edge. You don't have to have this ruler, but a straight edge ruler. And then, like I said, if you have the horizontal spool pin, you can put your binding up here. And then basically what I do is I kind of sneak it under over here, because then I want my binding to be able to lay, on the side. I'm going to actually, well, I'll probably start here. So anyway, so a few things there. You will also probably want, if you're going to use your ruler, you want your ruler tray. I realized that I came over here unprepared. I need to go get the tray and put it on. So I will get that. And then I'll be ready to start attaching the binding. The other thing you can do, and I kind of have this, I have this handle tilted up because you can see I have the mount for the camera there. But you can also move that handle out of the way if you want a little bit more space. So, okay, so I'm gonna go get my tray, and then I'm gonna get it attached, and then we're gonna start binding right here. Okay, so I have my ruler tray on now, so we're going to come over here, and what you wanna do is make sure that you have enough of an extra tail here, because we wanna make sure we have plenty when we get to the end to attach our ends together and finish our binding. So like I said, we did some masking here, so I have some extra threads I just need to move out of the way, but that's okay. So let's see, we're gonna go, I guess we'll go up. So I have probably about, here's my end, I have probably about, I don't know, 15 inches of binding loose from where I'm gonna start here. So I'm just gonna line this up. Of course, make sure your raw edge, right, is facing the edge of your quilt. And then I'm just gonna start here. So I've got my, like I said, I've got the ruler foot on. This is a 72, because ideally, right, we're stitching a 1/4 inch from the edge. So I'm going to bring up my bobbin thread, and we're gonna secure that. Now you can do this without a ruler, but I find that the ruler helps keep me straight, helps keep me going, keeping that 1/4 inch. So I'm going to just line up my ruler here, And you can, if you have markings on your ruler, like I have this ruler, you can kind of see here. I've got markings here, and I think I figured about the third line in is where I need to line it up, yeah, on my binding strip in order to keep my foot at 1/4 inch. And then I'm just gonna start stitching. And I'm just gonna slide my ruler, and then I'm just gonna keep going. And of course, at some point you're gonna run out of room. So right there, I ran out of room, no big deal. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go back to the other end. Let's get our binding out of the way and unlock the rail and just gently give it some slack and advance the quilt back so that I have more space to keep going with my binding. So we get a little bit of wrinkle here, but that's okay. We'll just straighten it out. And then I'm gonna pull a little bit more binding. Oops. We got our binding here. So one thing I will suggest, if you can see, so this is a long strip, is if you can wrap your binding a little bit tighter, then it will keep from getting jumbled like this. Now you could also, if I didn't want to hang it up there, or if you don't have a horizontal spool pin, we can just take our binding and we can just kind of flop it over here on our quilt, and then we can just grab what we need as we go. So I'm just gonna straighten out the next piece, grab my ruler. Now, if you're doing this, if you're putting on binding on a minky backed quilt, this is just cotton, but if you're doing this on a minky backed quilt, you are probably going to want to use your side clamps. Let's get a little more slack. Use your side clamps to, you know, hold some tension here on your minky, because, you know, minky is going to be a little bit more squirrely, but for the cotton, I can kind of get it. It'll cooperate with me for the most part. We're going to stitch our next run. Make sure everything stays straight. And there we go. So we're going to keep going like this, doing these sections until we get, till we work our way around the quilt. What I'm going to do is I will, I'm going to just stitch to the corner, and then when I get to the corner, I'm going to show you how we handle the corner once we get there. Okay, so we've made it to our corner. So you can see we're at our corner here. So I have about another inch to go before the corner, and that's fine. So what I'm gonna do, okay, so we're a little bit closer up here. Okay, so you can see I folded the binding back. So I came up, right? So here's my strip. It's coming off like that. I folded it back. So we're coming off the side now. So right, we're gonna head this direction across the top of our quilt. And then I'm going to flip this back, right? And make sure things line up here. And really part of what's important when we're doing this is you can see that fold. We don't want that fold to go past the edge of our other piece here, because when we go to trim the quilt down, we'll have the binding attached, and we don't want to accidentally cut that fold, and then we don't have a closed in piece of binding. So then I'm going to use my ruler to hold that down. And I'm gonna stitch back up till I'm right at the edge. And then what I like to do, just because sometimes it can be a little bit finicky, is I'll turn my ruler and use it to hold this piece down. And then I'm going to just slowly come back on, and then I like to just take a back stitch there, and then I can keep going. So let's zoom you back out. There we go. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take my binding, my whole big binding strip, and I'm going to, let's see if I can turn it. There we go. So I'm just gonna lay it out flat all the way across the top of my quilt here. Let's untangle this. And I'm gonna have to stop and readjust at some points, but that's okay. I just wanna get it kind of set up so that I only have to make minor adjustments instead of having to go and realign my strip a bunch of times. So there we go. All right, so we've got, you can kind of see it here, we've got it kind of lined out. So now we're just going to keep going here. And I'm gonna just adjust as I go and then get myself to the other corner and work my way back around. Okay, so I'm approaching the bottom corner of the quilt here, and this quilt isn't perfectly square, which it happens, let's be honest. So what I'm gonna do, and so I'm just gonna angle this here to see if you can see it. So you can kind of square your quilt while you put the binding on, so you can kind of see here. So I have some extra here, but I can kind of see as my binding's going down. Now, depending on whose quilt this is, of course, you know, make sure that they're okay with it. If you, you know, are squaring this for them with their binding, and how much is going to come off. This one is a solid piece here, so it's not going to, you know, like if it was a block or something, that might be an issue. But we can line this up as best as we can. You know, some quilts, you can just kind of manipulate it as you go, depending on what the, you know, if it's your quilt or it's somebody else's quilt and what they want you to do. So, so I'm just going to adjust this here, and then I'm going to keep going. Okay, so when I get to this corner, it's a little bit awkward, only because I have to kind of reach around the back to use the ruler, but that's okay. I just kind of have figured out how to make it work by reaching around. It's a little awkward with the camera here because it's right in my reach space, but that's okay. So we're just going to continue along here. And again, adjusting as needed as we go. Continuing all the way around. So I'm just going to keep going until I get back to my other corner, and then I'm going to show you how to overlap and attach our ends. Okay, so I've come to the end of where I want to stitch. You can see this is where I started. I've got it loose up here, but I want to make sure I leave enough room so that I have enough room to kind of pull it out to the side and attach the pieces together. So what I did when I got here is I just took a back stitch just to make sure that's secure, and then I'm going to pull my thread out here and pull the machine over, and then I'm going to pull the quilt down to where I can reach that connection. So okay, so here we are. Let's see. So here's an end. Oops. So here's my end where I started, and then I have where I stopped right here. So let's just, I gotta get some of these threads out of the way here. Okay, so these binding strips are 2.5 inches. So the way that I do my binding is I know that my strips need to overlap by 2.5 inches. So I have enough room here. Perfect. So what we're gonna do, let's find a ruler. Is figure out, this is where having the tray on helps too. So I'm just going to, so I've got stitching, let's see, my stitching stopped right here and right here. So I probably have about, I don't know, 12, 14 inches. Which, you know, depending on how comfortable you are, you might want to leave more space, but you know, it's just up to you. So I'm going to pick a spot about halfway to make sure I have enough room on both sides, and just mark a line. And of course I have gray on dark gray brown, so you can't see very well, but I marked a line, and that's where I'm going to cut this end. Okay, so cut that end. And now what I'm gonna do is, oops, let's find the end. We're going to overlap. We want our strips to overlap 2.5 inches. So let's see, I'm gonna line this up here. And so 2.5 inches is right here. So what I'm gonna do is lay my strip over, and then if you're worried about a straight line, you can use another ruler to do your line, or right here, 1, 2.5 is my 2.5 inches. Oh, of course my hand was in the way, but right here is my 2.5 inches. So that's overlapping my other strip by 2.5 inches. Can you see that? So I've got this overlapped right here. So I'm gonna cut on that line, and this will probably be easier to see now. So there we go. So I've got 2.5 inches overlap right here. Okay, so let's move some stuff out of the way. All right, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put some slack in our quilt. So I have both the rails unlocked, and I'm going to just put some slack in it. There we go. Pull this to the side. Now the trick will be, ooh, did I leave enough room? So if you don't leave enough room, this part is gonna be more challenging. But let's see if you can see my ends here. So basically what we're doing is we're just closing up. Let's just scooch a little bit further over here. We're closing up these ends. And I will fully admit to you guys that sometimes this takes me a few tries. I have to like work through it to get my strips overlapped the right way, because we don't want to have our strips going the wrong way. So one thing I did, I'm gonna link the gal, and I cannot remember off the top of my head now what her name is on Instagram, but I will find it and link it for you, because she has a fantastic tutorial. And she actually said when you're doing this process here, if you think of your I think she said selvage ends, but your cut edges as both being out, I don't know, that helped me last week when I was doing this process. So I'm just gonna set those there for now and grab a pin. I went to grab some pins, which apparently takes me a very long time. I'll be right back. All right, so I'm gonna pin this together and try and get it to stay. So let this be a lesson. I did not leave enough unstitched here to make this super easy on myself. It's doable, but it would be a lot easier. See, so I'm fighting with where it's stitched to the quilt already, which it happens. But leave yourself more room and it will make it a lot easier for you. I didn't use it because you might not have it yet, but this is the ruler that I was telling you about. Oh, look, see, perfect. Janae, Vintage Stitch Co. And Vintage Stitch Co. is, I believe, her name on Instagram too. Anyway, she's got a bunch of great videos on how to do this process, and this is her ruler that she just came out with. She has a tool to help you figure out where to stop at the corners, which I didn't use for my purposes. And then right here, she's got these measurements. So you can use this ruler for 2 1/4 and 2.5 inch binding to figure out your overlap too. I'm just gonna actually use it to mark my line for right now. So we're going to mark the line that we want to stitch, and I probably should find a better marking tool so that I can see my line. Okay, so let's mark this. So the other thing that comes in handy for this process is a cordless iron, because then I can iron my seam once I have it finished, stitched together. So I'm gonna get this set up and then we'll come back and stitch this. Okay, so we are ready to attach these ends. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll just kind of like faux tug, like I'll tug on this to see what it's gonna look like once it's done, just to double check myself. The other thing I did was I actually pulled some stitches just to give myself a little more slack, because what I need to be able to do is I need to be able to pull this, I need to be able to pull the quilt away to pull my strips over so I can actually stitch them together on the long arm as well. So, so I just pulled some stitches here, which is fine because I'm gonna go back and stitch it anyway. So let's get our thread up here. Got tangled up here. Okay. And we're gonna scooch over a little bit. So we're gonna pull up our thread. And then we're gonna just hold that and let's get it secured. And so this is where really, like, I tried to do this once without drawing the line. The line really is helpful. So I'm just turning the machine on and I'm just gonna carefully guide it through. Watch your fingers, of course. And come through. And there we go. And then you can just pull this over. We're gonna cut those. And then cut these. Oops. Okay. We're gonna scooch over, take our pins out. And before I do anything, I always double check. So I always double check that I got it correct. And I don't know why this is always, okay, so I've got it going the right way. Nobody's twisted, everybody's happy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to, see if he'll stay there. So we're gonna cut off our little extra here. Let's see. So we're just gonna cut off our extra. There we go. Okay. And then what we can do is pull the slack back up from our quilt. So let's do this side. Okay, there we go. So we've got the slack pulled out of our quilt. Right here is where we connected things. So I have my cordless iron hot. So I'm just going to bring my cordless iron over and I'm just going to give this seam a quick press here. And scooch our tray back a little bit. We don't want to melt anything. And then I'm just going to press my seam. So here's my seam right here. Just a quick press. Make sure everything's nice and flat. Okay, and now we're ready to close up that seam. So let's go back here. You can see where right here I pulled some stitches. That's okay. So re-secure this. Everything's lined up. Gonna do one advance. Give ourselves the rest of the room here. And finish off our stitching. So I just barely had enough room to close that. That's okay. I could always advance it again if I needed to. And there we go. And so now we've attached our binding completely with the long arm. Piece together our end. Let's get rid of that. And now all we have to do is trim down our quilt and we're ready to do the hand stitching. Okay, so hopefully that helped you guys be a little more comfortable with this process. I'm sure there are other tutorials out there. This, of course, is just my version of doing this. My version of, like, you know, on that one side where it wasn't quite square. To each their own, whatever version works for you, do that. If you have any questions about anything with this process, let me know. One tip with connecting those ends is just make sure if you want to go a little bit less than that overlap, so a little bit less than 2.5, I try and get it as close as I can, because we don't want any extra. Sometimes if I'm not paying enough attention, I get a little extra there, and then I have a gap or I have a tuck or something, or I have to take it out and fix it. So you just want to pay attention when you're doing that. But otherwise, I've attached the binding on the long arm. And I love this process because I hate trying to get my quilt through my sewing machine. The That's like my least favorite thing. So being able to do it on the long arm is just fantastic, because now I can pull the quilt off, trim the edges down, and I'm ready to go. And I can add it to my stack of like 20 other quilts that need me to hand bind, because that's also like my least favorite part. So I have this stack that's growing, but this quilt belongs to somebody else, so I don't have to do the hand sewing on this. So I'm just gonna give it back to her and she gets to do that part. So hopefully this helped you guys. If you have questions, let me know. Hopefully my neon fingernails weren't too distracting and they helped, you know, point things out. But these are it's spring, and I'm really trying to coax spring in with my fingernail polish colors. So anyway, hope you guys are quilting. Hope you're having fun. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer them, okay?